Of course, up next, live action. A little bit about our keynote speaker. Live action was started in 2003 by one 15-year-old girl in her family's living room, with the goal to expose what abortion does to the preborn child. Of course, you know of whom I'm speaking, Lila Rose. She worked with friends to make pro-life presentations to groups and shine a light on the reality of abortion. Lila started undercover investigations in 2006 while at UCLA. She was 18 at the time. In 2008, Live Action was legally formed as a nonpartisan, non-profit organization. And later that year, with a few of her friends, Lila created and produced the first nationally televised undercover investigation of the abortion industry. Live Action exists today to shift public opinion on the killing of preborn children and defend the rights of these most vulnerable among us. Through compelling educational media, human interest storytelling, and investigative reporting, Live Action reveals the humanity of the preborn and exposes the abortion industry's exploitation of women for profit. With the largest and most engaged online following in the pro-life movement, Live Action is leading the transformation to end this grave human rights abuse. If you please welcome Lila Rose of Live Action. Lila.
Thank you, Richard, and thank you so much, Tere, and the board, Peter on the board, the rest of the board members, the staff of Allied, our esteemed bishops that are here, and the beautiful faithfulness that you have shown in leading us for life, and then all of you that are here as volunteers and supporters of this amazing ministry. This is truly not just another fun charity evening, but this is truly the cause of our day. The greatest human rights issue of our day, and I believe one of the greatest causes that of not just our lifetime, but of this era. And it's a privilege and an honor to come alongside Allied and to support this incredible and beautiful and life-saving work. I came in this morning from Los Angeles. Any Californians? Okay, just you. I love Texas though. California, I will say I love our weather, I love our mountains, I love our ocean, but I do not love our politics. But I came in this morning, my husband and I recently moved to Los Angeles. We're both from the Bay Area originally. I had been years away in Washington, D.C., establishing Live Action's political arm, had moved back to California to expand our cultural and educational work. And my husband had been sailing the seven seas in the Navy, and then came back to the Bay Area for law school. So we got married 1 year ago. Marriage is the best. I highly recommend it. In case anyone is thinking about a vacation or not, I think it's amazing. And we're also expecting our first baby this coming December. So very many years, I actually became Catholic in college. So I went to UCLA and I didn't lose my faith, I actually found my faith, which is unusual, they say, for college. But I became Catholic in college and I started to do what every good Catholic girl does, which is pray to Saint Joseph. For your future spouse, of course. And then years later, I would meet not just my Saint Joseph, but his name is actually Joseph, my husband. And now our first baby is due on Christmas Eve. So it's a little boy, and we're thinking of naming him Jesus. we're not going to name him. And I told my husband, I said, we should be Joseph and Mary for Halloween. Always wanted to be married. So anyway, it's amazing to get to be Catholic, to get to be part of this movement. What I want to do this evening is share with you about some of the work that is being done by Live Action in our movement across our country and beyond, how I got involved, why there is hope in this great fight between life and death, this great battle between good and evil, why there's so much cause for hope. And then I hope to leave you with some things that I believe we all can do. Of course, being here and supporting Allied is the core of that tonight, but leave you with some things that I believe we can all do on behalf of life and behalf of actually transforming this work so that we can end abortion. in San Antonio, in Texas, in the United States, and across the world. I believe that that audacious goal is possible. And it's possible because of the work that's being done here, and in part here and across this country and across the world by good people who are answering the call, who are willing to stand up, speak out, give generously, serve, and be a part of God's plan, because God has a plan for this country. He has a plan for our world. He has a plan for each person in this room. And his plan is to bring all people to life and whole, to save souls and to bring all people to life and whole. I got involved in this movement as a teenager and started Live Action Then. We are now a leading digital nonprofit for the pro-life movement. So we reach millions of people every single week with the truth about abortion. We are exposing what abortion actually is, the beauty of the child and life, the risks to women, reporting on and exposing the abortion industry. We particularly reach out to young people. I think that's key, Generation Z, as well as my own generation, millennials, reaching out to them with the facts that they need. There are constantly lies being told to my generation, to younger generations, lies being told by powerful forces. But when I was a young girl, I got involved because I had an encounter with abortion. I'm from a big family. I'm one of 8 kids. I think there's some big families here tonight. I met a few of them. Actually, Tere, I think, wins the cake. Tere and her husband. Does anyone here have 15 kids or more? I think Tere needs a special award just for that. I was hearing all about it. It's pretty amazing. So my parents only had 8, just 8. But we were unusual because we weren't raised Catholic, so we were definitely the biggest evangelical family. I was raised kind of evangelical Protestant. We were definitely the biggest evangelical family. But my parents were very pro-life, just in the way that they embraced us kids, being generous, having us 8 kids. And because they were in support of life in general, they weren't activists though. So I didn't really have a foray into the pro-life movement until my teen years, when I realized I felt convicted that I had to do something about abortion. And this was born out of an encounter I had when I was 9 years old with a book in my parents' house. They were also home educators, so I was homeschooled and homeschooling. I met some of those young ladies earlier, actually, which is awesome. But we were homeschooled, and so my parents started a classical academy. They had this whole thing going on, but we had a lot of books in the house. We had books everywhere. And one of my goals as a young girl was to read all of them. I love to read. And so one afternoon, I found a book in my parents' living room called A Handbook on Abortion by Dr. and Mrs. Wilkie. Has anyone heard of this book or seen it before? Dr. and Mrs. Wilkie are kind of great-grandparents of the pro-life movement. They've now passed away, but they just did incredible work back in the 70s and the 80s. And this book, I remember this very serious-looking woman on the cover with this kind of 1980s hairdo, and I remember thinking, oh wow, this must be like a history book or something. Very interesting. So I pull it open, and it falls to the center where there are these images, and I'm shocked. I close the book, I push it away, I don't want to keep looking at what I was looking at. And then gathering up a little bit of my 9, 10-year-old courage, I draw the book back and I look again. And what I'm looking at is the image of a child, maybe 10 weeks old, with newly formed first trimester, with newly formed legs, newly formed arms, and you can see fingers and toes, this tiny newly formed little face at just 10 weeks, who had been torn apart by a powerful first trimester suction abortion. And I was just looking at this image and my heart was just cut. I thought, is this real? Is this really happening? How can we do this? I wanted to learn more. I started to flip through the book. I found my mom later that afternoon and talked to her about it. I said, what is this? Is this really happening? And she closed the book and she said, yes, and this is abortion. And so I kept asking questions. I kept trying to do research. I learned, and as many of us here know, that there's now 2,500 abortions in our country every single day. Almost 1 million every single year. I learned that in 1973, before I was even born, and many of us in this room were even born, there were 7 Supreme Court justices in black robes sitting on the Supreme Court who decided for the entire country, all men by the way, who decided for the entire country that abortion was somehow not just empowerment and a woman's right, but a constitutional right, invented this right out of thin air. And after that, because of that, we lost over 60 million children to the great violence of abortion. And it came across the writings of Blessed Mother Teresa Saint Mother Teresa of Calcutta, now saint, was actually in Rome for her canonization a few years ago. And as many of you may know or remember her by, this tiny little nun in the blue sari, she worked with the lonely, the lepers, the dying in the streets of Calcutta, India. But whenever this little nun had the chance, she had very strong things to say to the Western world about abortion. And she was a Nobel Peace Prize winner, so she was actually given one of the highest global awards that you can receive by elite nations. And in her Nobel Peace Prize acceptance speech, when she's speaking before some of the most powerful people in the world, many of them in support of abortion as a woman's right, this little tiny nun, who's there accepting her work for the lepers, for the dying, for those that are the least of these, she says, the greatest destroyer of peace in the world is abortion. She didn't say poverty. She didn't say the human rights crises, of which there are many across the world. There are many human rights issues. But she said the greatest destroyer of peace is abortion. And she also says, in a nation where a mother can kill her own child, what is left but for you and for I to kill one another? And reading her words, I was so deeply moved because I thought, this is the cause of our day. There are so many causes, there are so many political issues, there are so many cultural issues, but if we do not protect the most fundamental human right, which is life, for the most vulnerable members of our society, which are children, when they're the most dependent and the most undeveloped, when they're the tiniest, when they don't even have vocal cords developed to call out for help, when they are counting on the protection and the safe harbor of the womb. And if we can't protect them, and if we can't come alongside their mothers and their parents and their families to make that the safest place in the world, then we have peace. We do not have peace in the place where we're meant to have it, in the home. And we cannot have it then in the city, in the state, in the nation. And our laws are turned against the weak. Laws which are meant to be protecting of the weak, protective of the weak, and the strong, they can fight for themselves, but laws are meant to ensure that the vulnerable, the weak, there's rule of law, there's order in a society. But when we turn the law against the weakest, and we say that they no longer have rights, they no longer deserve legal protection, we are creating the greatest injustice at the heart of the law. And so as a young person, I thought, this is the cause, I have to do something. I'm gonna just get together with some friends, we're gonna find a way to educate others, because I also realized that so many people were being lied to. And starting Live Action, it was an educational movement. It was born out of just telling people this is what happens during abortion. These are the statistics. Here are the information about fetal development, embryonic development. It was very much peer-to-peer education. And when I got to college, I realized that the lies were not just being told. It wasn't just that people were being educated, but it was that people were being lied to. And I saw that at my public university that claimed to be about women's empowerment and options, there were actually no options for women. I realized very quickly, as unfortunately is the case in many of our campuses today, that there was a hookup culture. There were a lot of girls that were experimenting in freshman orientation at UCLA. We were told, if you come to college a virgin, don't think you're gonna leave college a virgin. This really crass and negative attitude towards sex and towards the beauty and the gift of that intimacy that God created and designed. Created and designed for a lifelong love, created and designed for the potential for children. And there was this health center at my campus that was ultimately promoting, as they called it, safe sex, which would mean go have sex with whoever, whenever, whatever, and just use a condom and you'll be fine. And girls were getting pregnant, and I knew that because I actually did the research and I found out that my health center on my campus of 40,000 people was processing, in the last reported year, 1,500 pregnancy tests. And I thought, how many of those girls, my fellow students, are pregnant, but I never saw a pregnant student on campus. It didn't add up. What were happening to these girls? And so my first investigative report was of my health center, asking the head nurse there what resources they actually provided pregnant women, because what about choice? What about options? Pro-choice, right? What about empowering women? And I was told that UCLA doesn't support women who are pregnant or help them necessarily. Point blank, the words from the head nurse at the student health center. but that there were 2 abortion doctors, and I was there saying, I'm Lila, I'm a student, but I said, I might be pregnant. What if I'm pregnant? What should I do? And she said, there's 2 doctors that you can go see, and they will both do abortions however you want, and we'll get the state of California to pay for it so it doesn't show up in your parents' insurance. But she told me that, I said, well, are there other options? And she said, well, carrying to term, you know, if you're trying to go to class, it will be really embarrassing for you because, and your fellow students, because you'll have to use the bathroom a lot during class. And if you had an adoption, then it would be like giving away a present. She said, and it would be something you might regret. The negativity and the outright lies to try to instill fear that pregnancy was not good, that this life was not good. And I realized very quickly, this is why I'm not seeing any pregnant girls on campus. Because they're going to the 2 abortionists and to the Planned Parenthood just a few miles away instead. And after seeing that, I realized there's much more to the story. It's not being reported on, but there's so much more happening in abortion clinics. There's dozens of abortion clinics in the greater LA area. There are hundreds throughout the state of California. I know there are those here in San Antonio. And I realized that there are lies being told to women every day behind these closed doors. Many of these closed doors, which are tax-funded at Planned Parenthoods, at abortion facilities across the country. And I wanted to find out and to expose what was really happening. Because when you look at the landscape today, when you look at the media, when we look at politics, when we look at academia, major public universities and colleges across our country, elementary school, the public school system, when you look at entertainment media, Hollywood, there are so many lies being told constantly to try to normalize abortion, to try to couch it in these positive sounding terms, like reproductive justice, like women's empowerment, like choice. Choice is a gift from God. Freedom is a gift from God that He gave us so that we can choose the good. But they co-opt these words, they take this language and use it to mask this great violence against children and this harm to women. And so I started to do research about the abortion industry because I wanted to expose what was happening, because I realized that if we could just educate others and reach people with the truth, we could change hearts and minds. And I strongly believe that because it was a matter of life and death, we had to do everything we could to tell the truth. And so it started with doing investigative reports in Los Angeles and then across the country. And I want to share with you just 2 encounters that I had doing some of that investigative reporting, because it opened my eyes to what women and girls are experiencing. One of the many abuses connected to the abuse of abortion is the sexual abuse cover-up of young women. Sexual abuse is a crisis in our country. We hear about it occasionally. It's the result of many things gone wrong in how we treat and respect one another, and twisted and addictions that our country has festered and our culture has festered. But many times young girls fall victim to abuse. And in the life of a sex trafficked victim in this country, studies and reports have been done, many of them endure forced abortions, or even multiple forced abortions, because their traffickers want to keep them in business. And if you're a sexual abuser of a young girl and you get her pregnant, it's in your interest to find a way to get her a secret abortion, because you don't want anyone to know about what you're doing, what the abuse is. And so abortion facilities become partners to sexual abusers. And I came across court cases of young girls who had grown up and sued Planned Parenthood because of the abuse that they had endured at the hands of maybe a stepfather or a coach or some other abusers, and were taken sometimes for repeat abortions to a Planned Parenthood abortion facility, which was required by law to report the abuse. And yet, instead of doing the legal requirement to report the abuse to attempt to rescue that girl, Planned Parenthood would cover up the abuse instead and give a secret abortion and send that little girl right back into the arms of her abuser. And I came across a study that was done of over 800 Planned Parenthood facilities that found that over 90% of them, when they did phone calls to these facilities with an actor posing as a 13-year-old girl, over 90% of them told who they thought was a 13-year-old girl on the phone that they effectively had a don't ask, don't tell policy on child sexual abuse. Meaning, she would say, I have a much older boyfriend or this older guy, what should I do? They would urge her to come in for a secret abortion, no questions asked, and they would send her on her way. Reading this, researching this, I was so moved. I have 2 little sisters. one of my close friends growing up endured abuse. Learning about these things, I thought, no wonder that the abortion industry not only victimizes the child, profiting off of the death of a child, but is also victimizing women. Sometimes extremely vulnerable and even abused women and girls at some of their worst moments. So 2 of my first investigative reports was going into a Planned Parenthood in Los Angeles, 2 of them on the same day, posing as a 15-year-old, saying that I was 15, pregnant, not sure what to do, had an older boyfriend. I wanted to capture this on camera because there was no reporting being done on this. The Los Angeles Times was busy investigating tanning salons and maybe the Catholic Church, but they're not going to touch abortion facilities. In fact, I talked to the detective in LA who was the head of the sex crime unit for over 20 years, and he was then retired, but he said that in his time, following up on all these cases of abuse in the larger LA County, he never received a single call or a single tip from any abortion clinic, despite the fact that they're mandated reporters for sexual abuse according to state law. So my first time going into a Planned Parenthood facility, I'll never forget it, posing as this underage girl. I remember walking in, there were all these women sitting in the waiting room. One of them looked like she was gonna cry. I mean, some of them were very young. There's an old TV blaring. On the wall of the facility, it had the word in brightly colored letters, Esperanza, which means hope in Spanish. That was one of the most hopeless places in Los Angeles, and yet they dared to put that word on their wall. They were promoting and selling abortions. And I walked up to the check-in counter and I said, "Hi, I'm 15, and I think I'm pregnant, and can I talk to somebody?" And she said, what's really going on? Because I was expressing that I was nervous, I didn't know what to do. So she took me behind the check-in counter so nobody could hear our conversation in the waiting room. And she said, "Okay, what's really going on?" I said, "Well, I'm 15 and he's a lot older." I said, "He's 23 and I'm just not sure what to do." And in the state of California, that immediately should trigger suspicion, that should trigger reporting, that should trigger what's really going on, who are the parents, where are you from? But instead she laughed and she told me to figure out a birth date that works. She told me to lie on the paperwork to say that I was older than I really was so that nobody would know about the secret abortion and they would not trigger any reporting and no questions would be asked. Leaving that facility, my heart thinking, wow, one already for one. Same day went to a second facility, the same scenario played itself out. And at the second facility, the manager actually took me into her office and explained to me that when she was my age, she didn't care about the older boyfriend, they weren't gonna report it. When she was my age, she said she also got pregnant. And I remember thinking, oh wow, I said, you were pregnant too? And she said, yes, when I was 16, I got pregnant and I was really young, she said. And I said, okay. And she said, yeah, and I had my baby. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, this is like the Planned Parenthood manager. She's telling me she had her baby to a girl she thinks is pregnant. And I think, okay, I'm undercover, she may be undercover as a pro-life counselor at Planned Parenthood, telling me to have their babies and we're like both undercover with each other. So I was like, what is going on? So I said, you had your baby? And she said, yeah, yes. But if I could do it again, I would do it very differently. If I could do it again, I would have had the abortion. Kids cost a lot, she said. My son is still at home. The economy's really bad. It was really hard for me to finish school. She was encouraging me to buy her abortion at her facility, an abortion at her facility, by saying she wished she could go back in time and have the abortion that she never had. I don't know if it's an actually true story, if it was just a sales pitch. Later on, when we started to investigate across the country, we'd hear similar lines of counseling. Women and counselors in Planned Parenthood saying, I don't know if I'm not supposed to share this with you, but I got pregnant when I was a teenager and I had the abortion, or I didn't have the abortion, encouraging us to have the abortions. But the reality is, women every day going in, and instead of receiving the welcome and the support and the celebration that they deserve, receiving instead a bill for an abortion and being sent off to submit their bodies and the bodies of their children to an abortionist. And it leaves behind a woundedness and a pain that's shrouding all across our country. So many people, many brave women I've had the privilege to speak to who have spoken out and told their stories about their abortion, saying, this was not good for me. And thanks be to God for the healing he extends, not just to women, but to men and to families. That healing is possible, and that's part of our message as a movement. But that power and that testimony to say, this was not empowering. No woman walks into an abortion facility feeling powerful. She walks into an abortion facility because she feels powerless. She feels like that's her only option. She feels like this is what she has to do because of the boss that she is afraid that she'll disappoint, the job she might not be able to keep, the boyfriend she might not be able to keep, the education she's attempting to get, whatever it is, she's feeling like this is her last and only option. We've been sold such a lie as women and girls in this country. We have bought such a lie that's been told to us that somehow this was going to empower us, but it's done nothing but. But it's amazing to see that when people learn about what's actually happening in the abortion industry, and many years later, after many years of investigative reporting, Live Action News continues to do investigative reporting. We partner with others doing incredible work to expose what's happening in the abortion industry. Many more people are waking up. In the last 10 years, we've seen Planned Parenthood defunded at the state and even in part at the federal level. As many of you might know, in the last year, the defunding for Title X actually went through at the federal level. So Planned Parenthood lost $60 million every single year. They will lose that money. So very good work is being done. I want to say one other thing to do with politics, because this is a cultural battle first and foremost. It's a battle for hearts and minds. It's a battle of education. But I do need to mention something. Coming from California, and I'm ashamed of the politics in my state, we just passed a bill that will force college campuses like my alma mater, UCLA, to actually hand out and distribute abortion pills. So they're turning every campus in college, in California, into an abortion center. And this means that girls will be self-aborting in their dorms, sometimes in co-ed bathrooms. I mean, terrible darkness. Also, my good friend David Delighted, who worked with Live Action for years, and my friend Sandra Merritt, is being criminally prosecuted in the state of California for their courageous investigative reporting of the sale of baby body parts. That case is ongoing. Who was the one who started that case against them? Does anyone know? Former Attorney General of California, now U.S. Senator, now running to be the President of the United States, Kamala Harris. This is the state of politics in our country, and I just want to mention this because I was watching the Democratic debate just a couple nights ago, and I understand the objections about the Republican side. I'm not here to say vote one way or another, Republican versus Democrat, except to say this. Regardless of our political affiliations that might be decades in the making, there is never an acceptable reason for us to vote for a politician who supports the destruction of human life, of children at their most vulnerable, and through all 9 months, which is what every single Democrat supports. And I'm very passionate about this because I even registered as an independent in California. And I don't like the partisanship. I hate how intense it is, and I want us to work across the aisle. But every single person right now running as a Democratic candidate for U.S. president supports abortion at least through 28 weeks of pregnancy. I'm 30 weeks pregnant right now. My baby can survive outside the womb, my little boy. A baby can survive outside the womb at just 22 weeks. Supporting for any reason, and not just that, but tax-funded abortions of these children. So the extremism is obvious. I think we see the polarization, but what I also see in our country is despite the extremes we see represented in politics, in media, often in even social media debates, the reality is, according to polling, most Americans want significant restrictions on abortion. In fact, the latest Gallup poll, more Americans identify as pro-life than pro-choice. It's just a quiet majority. It's many people that maybe won't say it, but deep down they know it, that abortion isn't right. They're not comfortable with abortion. And that's because I believe, and we know for many of us here as Catholics, God's law and his love is written into our hearts. We know we have that instinct to protect, that instinct to care, instead of that instinct to not care or to even destroy or to kill. And people are waking up. It takes one soul, one person at a time. I want to share with you a video that I hope will encourage you. It's a sampling of this work being done. So the political fight is important, investigative reporting is important, reporting on what's happening, but I think the core of our movement in our care and service, like what's being done at Allied, alongside serving and caring for women, babies, and their families, is education, and that's heart to heart, mind to mind. So the video I want to share with you is a sample of some of this work being done to educate. And it's a video that's filmed across West Coast cities. So we went to places where it might be the hardest to educate people: Portland, Oregon, Seattle, Washington, San Francisco, California, and Los Angeles. I figure if we can change hearts and minds there, then maybe we'll get a welcome in San Antonio, Texas. We'll see. But it's amazing to see that when people actually have the opportunity to learn what abortion actually is, just the facts, the procedure. Most people don't actually know what it is. They don't actually understand the development of life in the womb. They've bought these slogans, they've bought these political phrases that are used. They just think it's this political battle that's happening. But when people have an opportunity to learn, it's transformative for them. And the video I want to share with you is a series of individuals who are watching a 3-minute video that is part of a series of 4 videos, and they're the most prevalent abortion procedures in the country through each trimester of pregnancy. And they're created through live action, working with a former abortionist named Dr. Anthony Levatino. Has anyone heard of Dr. Levatino? He's an incredible figure in our movement. He's a former abortionist that now speaks out on behalf of life. But he narrates these videos, and they're medical animation, so they show what happens during each abortion procedure, the development of the baby. They're not gory because they're animations, but they're precise, they're accurate. They actually show people what happens. And so in the video, you'll see people having, for the first time, the opportunity to actually see what an abortion is. And these videos have been viewed over 100 million times online. They're the most watched pro-life videos on the internet. And they actually can be transformative for someone who before might consider themselves pro-choice. So we can play that video now.
Can I ask a question or make a statement before you start the video? I keep hearing in my mind, 9 years old is where we have to get our children to let them know that this is wrong. I don't know, I just keep hearing, tell her 9 years old or before. Don't wait until they're in high school, middle school. We need to do it.
I think parents getting involved in educating our kids, I completely agree. I completely agree. We focus on high school and up because we're on smartphones largely, but anybody we can educate, we want to reach. So I think is the projector going perfect. So I'll see you guys in a minute. Enjoy it.
What do you think about abortion?
I'm like hella liberal, so it's like obviously I'm pro-abortion.
There are times when you do need abortion, and it's up to that person and their rights and what they want to do.
It's our body, it's our decision, right?
If you're young, it's probably a good thing. If you want to go to college, it's hard for a baby in college.
Would you identify as pro-life, pro-choice, or neither?
Pro-choice, for sure. I had no idea this is how abortion takes place, right? Looking at the video and the way it was performed, yeah, it's an eye-opener. So, no, I don't think any kid, any baby, any infant, any fetus should go through that. No.
I mean, it seems just in general, anytime you have to kill something, it's inhumane.
So are you saying this is a human life?
I mean, it's definitely present, you know? I mean, yeah, I guess, like, even if you can't afford to, if someone can take care of these babies, I guess, like, don't abort them, you know?
The videos that you guys showed me has changed my mind. Yes, circumstances, it still makes it hard, but because of the video, I think I kind of have, like, a better idea.
And I felt bothered by it, kind of like had a little change of mind, being middle of the road, to saying maybe I would not be for abortion, no matter what, no matter what the circumstances are.
After especially seeing this video, I realize now, like, abortion is really wrong. Yeah, really, really wrong. Wow.
It's scary to see it. I hope I will never have to do that, or I will never do that from my point now.
One word, your thoughts on what you saw? It's actually really emotional. And I just think, I think that abortion is wrong in all cases. And maybe there should not be any laws with any exceptions. Would you say that this video changed your mind at all about abortion and your company?
Absolutely, absolutely. I've never seen it in detail like this.
And who do you think should watch these videos?
I think everybody, especially the young girls growing up. I will show this to my daughter, that this is how they abort children.
Before a law is passed, I think they should include videos such as the video that they showed us. And I'm pretty sure that a lot of people will change their mind based on it.
There's so many other options apart from abortion, and I know it sucks, and like the consequences of how it happened and why you want an abortion, but there's always another option, and you just gotta suck it up because it's a life.
And for that last slide, it should be Allied Women's Center. So this was a video that we actually are sharing at our gala, but it shows that people do change. People do change. Hearts and minds do change. And they are changing. And I think sometimes I think it can be possible to get discouraged, or even to think that, we're fighting this fight, but we're this minority and we're out there, we're going to do our best, but at the end of the day, there are these powerful evil powers that are just taking over, and we are this tiny minority. The reality is, Satan does have a plan for San Antonio. He has a plan for Texas, he has a plan for the United States, he has a plan for the world, he has a plan for each of us. But God has a plan too. God has a plan too. And he wants us to believe that these things are possible. That it is possible to change our culture. It is possible to transform our communities, to make them abortion-free. It is possible to end abortion in the United States and beyond. It is possible with God's help. It takes our work, it takes our courage, it takes our hope, but it is possible. People do change, and they are changing. I'm privileged to see it every day in the work that Live Action is doing. You are privileged to be a part of it every day in the work that Allied is doing, actually watching women change their minds. Women who were abortion-minded, who instead, after having an encounter with the love and the opportunity for resources, can transform and go from I was going to have an abortion appointment to no, I'm going to say yes to this life. That's the power of the truth and love working together to set people free. That's true freedom. And it's happening every day, and it can happen in greater ways than we can even dare to imagine. I think sometimes we struggle with a poverty of imagination, a poverty of hope and belief in what is possible with God. We know that nothing is impossible with God, that all things are possible with God, that He's all-powerful. We have the power of the Holy Spirit, we have the intercession of the saints, we have the intercession of the Blessed Mother. This is their cause first. And the beauty of this is that by entering into this work and dreaming big for our families, for ourselves, for San Antonio, for what's possible, for Texas, for beyond, by dreaming big, we actually are transformed ourselves. I know that God has done incredible work in my own soul by me having the privilege of being involved in this movement and involved in this work. It is a privilege for our own souls and helps to transform our own souls as we work to serve and to love others. I want to leave you with 3 things that I hope we can all do leaving here tonight. First of all, it's simple, but it's actually very not so simple, is each one of us here we're called to become saints. If we want to end abortion, if we want to save lives, and if we want to live the life that we were created to live, every single person here, no exception, not just our holy bishop here, our bishops, is called to be a saint. And what does that mean? It's not just this Catholic word that we throw around, right? And we read about the saints of the past and the martyrs, but it's a living thing that we're called to do today. What does it entail? It entails prayer, having a commitment to prayer each day, even 15 minutes, a Eucharistic life, receiving the sacraments, going to confession. We need to be people of prayer, praying for an end to abortion. It means formation. That means studying our faith, studying how to become better people, studying how to grow in virtue, studying how to be the best person in our teens, in our 20s, when we're dating, when we're married, when we have kids, when now I'm going to become a mother, how do I be the best mother I can be? Putting our minds and our hearts to work. How do I grow in virtue? How do I become the best version of myself that God is calling me to be? And seeking out guidance and community. People around us who can strive us on towards holiness. Spiritual guides and mentors who can help lead us and teach us so that we can become holier. That is really how the work to end abortion is done, by our personal transformation. Secondly, we have to take action. A saint, of course, takes action. It's our study, it's our prayer, but it's going out and being unashamed of speaking the truth. Part of the problem in our country is people are afraid, they're scared. They're going to get beat down, they feel it, by the media or by friends or by school or on social media. But when you speak out, there are going to be so many others that were silent that will look to you and be encouraged and be inspired and be strengthened. I remember being very young as a teenager, and I would have pro-life club and no one would show up to meetings sometimes. People wouldn't want to come, they'd be busy, and I'd say to my mom, "Mom, no one's coming and I'm trying so hard to get this thing going." And she told me, "Look, Lila, leadership is lonely, but you gotta keep trying and eventually people will follow." Now Life Action has almost 4 million people following us online. But it takes perseverance and day in, day out, speaking out, even if you feel like you're speaking alone, and doing it with love, and doing it out of the formation that you've taken, the education, the time you've taken to study. And then the last thing, and this is where we'll end, and I know we're going to have Tere come up here in a moment, but of course, to give till it hurts, to give generously. That is transformative for us, to sacrifice. Sacrifice is an incredible way to unite ourselves to Christ, to unite ourselves to his mother whose heart was wounded on behalf of all of us as she was wounded looking at her son on the cross who died for us. She said yes to life, and that required a lifetime of sacrifice. I know she intercedes for us, our Blessed Mother, but our sacrifice changes us. And tonight there's a really clear and easy way to sacrifice. And it's not just not eating your cupcake. I ate my cupcake before dinner, actually. It's the baby, I'm hungry. But sacrifice, finding a way to give as generously as you can. Allied is doing incredibly beautiful work, and it's a privilege that all we have to do tonight is write a check. Isn't that great? Or reach deep into our pockets, and then of course pray and volunteer, but to give the best of our abilities as much as we can to support the incredible work and the project of Allied. Thank you all so very much, and God bless you, and let's become saints together so we can transform this country and this world. Thank you.
I absolutely love how she says she's pregnant with her first baby. Woo-hoo! Keep it going. Way to go, Lila. Thank you so much for sharing that.